Cyril. I'm living here in Montreal. Currently been living here for the last about 17, 18 years, since '96. Before that I grew up in the eastern part of Canada, in Nova Scotia. Lived there with my parents and my one brother. My family wasn't really overtly religious. I mean, they were sort of nominally Christian. We celebrated Easter and Christmas and the typical sort of way it is here in Canada. But we didn't go to church or anything like that. My father comes from an Irish Protestant family, and my mother comes from an Irish Catholic family. So with all the history there, I think they decided to just kind of leave it out. I mean, in terms of feeling a pull to look at different religions and to try to go towards one, that came later. But you know, before that, I did. You know, when I was lying, falling asleep at night, these are the sort of things I would think about. You know, I was very big into science. That's what I studied in my undergrad, physics and math. So I had an interest in thinking about the scale of things in the universe, the big things and small things, and asking, you know, where it came from. And so from this, it kind of naturally led to thinking about that. In my teenage years, I wasn't so much interested in organized religion, though. I found that to be too much trouble and too much about old rituals and belonging to some organization that might be man-made and things like that. But I liked to think about, okay, where did this come from? Where we have this universe, where did it come from? It must have come from somewhere. You know, what would be the characteristics of whatever brought that about? And these are the kind of things I like to think about to test my mind when I was younger. But in terms of moving consciously towards practicing a particular organized religion from a established tradition, that didn't come until later. I moved to Montreal in '96 for my schooling. Went to McGill to do my science degree, and ended up staying around. Studied my science degree, was interested in teaching science and math, did an education degree, and later on did a master's also in the field of education, and ended up sticking around here. I had a period where I finished my science degree, and I was trying to figure out what came next, and generally I was in a bit of kind of period of confusion and looking for some sort of guidance at that sort of point. For different things, some of it I remember, some of it I don't. It was too long ago, but I mean, at one point in my life, I had a sort of sense about religions that didn't have to follow some established tradition. Could just kind of take a menu approach. Could read about different ones and see this that you like and see this that you like. I mean, a lot of young people have this kind of point of view, if they're here in Canada. If they're not, they don't turn away from religion completely. They take this kind of point of view. I like this, I'll take this, I'll leave that, sort of thing. But at a certain point, I guess I kind of came to the conclusion that you know, established traditions, it's not it's not necessarily a bad thing, because these are patterns of behavior and organization of people that, they survived as a tradition because something about it worked. So I started looking in more detail in different world religions. So reading the different texts and some of the different texts, looking into stories about the Buddha, looking into reading bits of the Torah, the Old Testament, reading from the New Testament, looking at the Gospels, looking at the letters and all the other materials, and I looked at the Quran at that point as well, but at a certain point it didn't resonate with me. I didn't get a good translation. Maybe the first read, it didn't speak to me. It was a little bit too foreign, right? I wasn't in the right mindset or something at that point. But later on, I happened to come back to it. I came towards Islam, I guess, in summer of 2002. So this was after the 9/11 tragedy late in the fall of 2001, and so Islam and different views of it and different ideas of it were in the media. There's a lot of kind of demonizing of it at that time. So like a lot of people, I guess that was kind of a catalyst to look into it a little bit more. Okay, the media are talking kind of badly about this group of people. My experience is a lot of the time when when the media talks about a group of people like that, they're often lying. So I'll find out. Maybe these are a great group of people. Maybe it's a mixed bag of people. But I'll find out what the truth about it is. So went at it again. Read a nice translation of the Quran. I think it was the Arbery translation, the A.J. Arbery translation from Oxford or Cambridge or whatnot. So I read that one, and for some reason I was in the right frame of mind, and it resonated with me. It spoke to me at that point. And wanted to look into it more. I mean, the different translations, they vary. Some of them are very smooth, and they capture the poetry and the rhythms and the power of it, which is a lot of the actual experience when you actually listen to it in the original. There's the words and there's the ideas, but then there's the style of it. So I found that translation captured a little bit more of the poetry of it, brought it to life, some of the sense of the imagery of it. That was one thing I found very interesting. It kind of painted visual pictures, very compelling, very vivid visual pictures were painted of things. So I was that was a prompt to look into it deeper at that point. I connected a little bit more with it, that reading. As well, my wife at that time, my ex-wife now, but my wife at that time was also kind of going in the same direction and was kind of looking into it, and so we fed off of each other a little bit at that point, and in reading about it, looking at it more. She happened to know some people from the community here in Montreal, so from that we got access to some books that I read further in. I think one of the books was a set by an Iranian author, Syed Mujtaba Mousavilari. He's got books that are translated in all kinds of different languages, but he had a 4-volume series about introduction to, you know, the roots, the foundations of the religion, God and the attributes, prophethood, imamate, and these sort of things. I sort of found it afterwards. I didn't realize at the time. I didn't know about Sunnis and Shias and this sort of thing, but I happened to have been, I guess, kind of fortunate that I happened to be that small percentage that actually heard about it from the Ahlul bayt perspective from the first. I guess most converts, I guess, when they learn about it from the Sunni perspective first, just because there's more of them, and for some inexplicable reason they tend to take their job more seriously in terms of communicating what they believe rather than just kind of sitting off by themselves. So for some reason I heard about things from that perspective at first, and Christianity, the Gospels, I loved reading about those. I fell in love with the character of Jesus as portrayed in those stories, but when I read the perspective of Paul, I didn't find it meshed, so it was confusing like that. Islam is presented through the Quran and through some of these basic books describing the basic ideas of it. I appreciate a certain rationality about it. So in the pureness of the monotheism, which is something shared with Judaism as well that I appreciated, but I also liked the more universal message about Islam. It's not. It has that monotheism, but it's not something for a particular group or race of people. It's something for all of mankind, and I like the idea of salvation as something a more simple kind of more sensible view of it. That you know, it's not about some sacrifices someone else made for you, but it's your own efforts, your own sincerity, your own efforts to, you know, turn from your behaviors and to be repentant for it. And I also appreciate the perspective that there were messengers that went to all different places of the world in many different times. So it kind of was an explanation for, all right, there's supposed to be one religion of humanity, but we see this fractured into different religions and different sects and things. You know, the idea that it's one message, it's one movement, but people kind of split that up. So I found it compelling, and I mean, I also learned about the little bit about biography, the character of Muhammad, and was impressed. I mean, some things were confusing to understand at that point of view, you know, because it was such a different time and place in which he lived, and some of the social things that they were dealing with. But, you know, taking that into account, and I was very impressed with that. And after a certain amount of time further of reading and of reading about the ideas and about the rituals and things, I felt comfortable enough to say that okay, I'm on board with this. This is something I want to pursue. In terms of affecting me, I guess, I mean, it was a challenge to figure out some of the details that people in the community that grew up in the community or that were in the community for a while kind of take for granted. So some of these details of life about religious laws of cleanliness and halal food and the details of prayers and memorizing surahs to pray and these sort of things. So this kept me busy for a while to learn all of these sorts of things and to get comfortable with that and to learn about different ideas in the religion. In terms of my parents, they've been really nothing but supportive. I have nothing to complain about at all. They when I, like I said, I mean, when I growing up, our household was not, how to say, it wasn't an irreligious environment. It was, but it just wasn't. Nothing, no particular path was kind of pushed, and all that was taught was kind of a general, good behavior, ethical behavior, treating people properly. So, stemming from that, I didn't have any sort of negative reactions. Unfortunately, I guess some people do have that. I don't have too much experience. I don't have any experience of that myself. When myself and my kids go to visit, a few weeks before they'll go to the nearest city. They'll pick up some halal meat, and so that we can eat that while we're down. So I mean, they're very supportive. Friends that I had here. Not to a huge extent. I mean, I think there were a few people, kind of old friends from before that might have gotten a little spooked about that. But even in my old friends from high school that I know on Facebook and things like that. I mean, it's been pretty supportive. I mean, they don't necessarily agree, but they're willing to be. What to say? Yeah, they don't necessarily agree, but we get along. I mean, it's a relationship that I wish was better. With the busyness of our lives these days, it's something that's easy to. Sometimes you can get caught up with things, and you can get led away, and then you remember yourself and come back, and you ebb and flow, kind of like tides, I guess. With myself, that's kind of the reality, unfortunately. But the beautiful thing is the stories are always there, and you can these great human examples. So you can always get reminded of these as the seasons go on, and some of these events of Ramadan and Muharram come around again. And the nice thing about the commemorations of Muharram is this annual intense reminder to try to wake up your mind again and pull you away from some of the stuff that it's so easy to get lost in with how busy we are with school or work or whatnot. And I get waylaid with with a lot of these things myself, but I find these stories, when I have the time to catch myself and look at them again and remind myself again, they're so powerful. They always help to draw you back. there's a lot of things. There's a lot of different stories. Just the idea, I guess, of recognizing, of piercing through the fog of confusion, and recognizing all once what's the right way to go, and being willing to stand behind that at all costs. It's a very difficult kind of thing to do, but I guess because it's difficult, that's why it's so valuable and powerful a lesson to know that there are people that were willing to give everything they had, even their lives. The story of Hor always resonates with me, because he was, I mean, the Imams and the Prophet and his family, they're great role models, but they're almost too perfect sometimes, as sometimes a little hard to relate when you're just an average schmuck. But Hor, I mean, an example of just an everyday, everyday person. He was doing his job. He got caught up in this whirlwind of historical events, and he had the opportunity to make a choice within his simple reality of which way to go, and he chose the right thing. So I mean, that's a story that's resonant for me. I mean, whether it's on big things or it's on little things, I guess, to speak up and stand for what you realize is right, even when everything is against you, even when it's going to cost you. It's hard, but it's a great message. Imam Musa al-Kadhim is one figure that always particularly resonated with me. I mean, for one reason, it's because everyone talks about Muhammad and Fatima and Ali and Hassan, Hussein, and not so much energy or not so much attention. I mean, it's not intentional, but not as much attention is paid to some of the later figures, and I kind of like to be non-conventional. I mean, that's kind of how I came to the faith and this particular branch within in the first place. And so for that, I mean, just to remember one of the later Imams, and also, I mean, just because his character, his example is very compelling. You know, imprisoned most of his life, but for a huge part of his life up to his death, but he managed to keep his composure and stay strong in the midst of that. And also, I find his nickname Al-Kadhim to be an inspiration in the idea of controlling and swallowing back your anger. As an Irishman, it's not something I always do perfectly well, but I have some work to do in myself with that. But at least that name and that example kind of helps to remembering that helps to keep that under control. The story of Karbala, I heard about, I learned about this history pretty early. I mean, from what I recall, I mean, I attended events in the community the first Muharram after I joined the faith. I didn't really understand much of what was going on, just because events in the community centers were not in the languages of here. They weren't in English or French. They were in the languages of whatever country people had come from. So I couldn't really absorb too much other than a sense of the emotionality of the room. But I did read a fair amount about what I could find about the history of these events and the history that led to it, which was some complicated reading to sift through that history and some of the counter perspectives, and to feel confident about a particular understanding of the history. So that took a while. But I mean, definitely that story and the stories of the struggles of Muhammad's family after his passing were resonant for me. What to say? I mean, it's a mixed bag. It kind of depends from place to place that you go to. I mean, I've never gotten any kind of reaction that I treat as hostile or negative or anything like that. I mean, I've heard complaints about that sort of thing from some of the young sisters that joined the faith, that they have experiences like that, where people were cold to them or whatnot, which was unfortunate. I never perceived anything like that myself. I mean, I'm not necessarily the most socially aware person. My head's usually in a different space, but I never consciously experienced it. I can't really complain about that myself, although others have different reports. I received a relatively warm reaction. I mean, you know, some of this stuff led me to doing writing to share with people in the community as a way to kind of address some of these things. But well, I mean, the linguistic stuff. I mean, recognizing that you know, whether you can accept that or not. And I'm speaking here, I guess, to the people that run these centers, and some of them succeed in this, and some of them don't make so much effort. But to, you know, recognize that you're here, you're rooted here, you're probably not going back to wherever you went, and your children certainly aren't going to do that, and they're the future. And so, I mean, language is not the only thing. I mean, but it's kind of a necessary thing to do more programming, and meaningful programming, not just an afterthought. We'll have a little bit of this to for people, but you know, to seriously do things in the languages of the people in this country, in these countries. If in France it's French, if it's in Canada it's English or French, if it's in America it's English or Spanish or whatnot. But you know, I make the analogy with Islam's that spread around to different countries. So it started in Arabia. People were speaking Arabic. They sent missionaries to different places. They went to Persia, they went to India, they went to Afghanistan, and they came to places where Arabic wasn't the spoken language. And you know, you don't have mosques in Iran where people are speaking Arabic just because that's where these missionaries came from once upon a time. They adapted to local culture, and they transmitted the same universal ideas, but in the language that fits for there. So, I mean, a lot of centers are frankly dying because of this sort of thing. You know, again, some places are more successful than others in adapting like this. You know, a lot of centers in the U.S. or other parts of Canada and maybe in England, it seems that a little bit more advanced in trying to, you know, recognize these things and trying to take action about it. But language is a big thing, like I said, for not just converts, but the youth of the former generations of immigrants who established communities here. And also, I guess, just kind of social network support. You know, if someone comes in, starts spending a little bit of time to, you know, reach out and share telephone numbers and not just kind of hand over a book and leave people alone. You know, books are useful. That's a good thing. You know, learning is important, but we're also social creatures too, and that's one of the big things that a lot of people have trouble with. They feel disconnected after a while. They have trouble making connections like that. So I mean, centers and the people within them can help with that. I mean, to just reach out to people, share phone numbers, exchange phone numbers, keep in touch with people, invite them over for dinner, and just keep an eye on them, check up on them, and see if they need anything, see if everything's okay. Invite them out to community, religious, and social gatherings, and so both of these things are things that could improve. I don't want to make any illusions. There are a lot of social challenges with making that step, and for some people, some people have smoother experiences than others with that, and the Muslim community is by no means perfect, and the people within the community are by no means perfect, and but I'm not perfect, and you're not perfect either. But the thing that helps me, that I always keep in mind, is that you know, while there's a social aspect to any organized religion, at the heart, the faith is not about your relationship with other people. I mean, what do I mean by that? I mean, there's ethics in the religion about how you're supposed to treat other people, but you know, whether to follow a particular religious path doesn't depend on whether the people in that community you're entering into are good or bad people, or whether they're following what they're supposed to be following or not. Ultimately, the religion is about your relationship with your Creator, how you view your Creator, and your effort to form a relationship and get close with your Creator. So these social things and difficulties in the community and challenges with these kind of movements, ultimately it's not relevant. It's what's relevant is, do you think this is the truth? Do you think this is the right view of your Creator? And if you do, then you have a duty to investigate that. I mean, this is it's difficult, but I mean, this is something that's kept me going through a lot of disappointments and frustrations with how things actually are. Is to, even if everyone else is doing things wrong, and even if the community were entirely off the track, you still have a duty to keep with it. It's not about joining a social club. It's about you're not in it for the people. You're in it for the truth. You're in it for your Creator. So you keep that in mind, and you can trudge through the rest of it. That's my experience anyway.
Whom does patience learn? Is there a symbol or a perfect guide? From whom does patience learn? Is there a symbol or a perfect guide? When sits on man's shoulders the world and his restraint wants to fail him, his inner screams that need restraint. When sits on